Hello, and welcome to the Not Quite Otaku Anime Podcast, Episode 9. I'm Joe.
And I'm Brandon.
And today we'll be doing another episode of Does It Hold Up? And today, Brandon, what will we be talking about?
So today we will be talking about the movie Akira, which was released in, 1988?
Yep, the year I was born.
Yep, so we're going on 3 decades now. And I think we both watched the 2001 dub with Johnny Young Bosch. All right.
Yep. Realize I just aged myself with that, mentioning it was my birthday, but I already mentioned that in another episode, so whatever, who cares? So we watched the one with Johnny Young Bosch. There's a lot of people, a lot of familiar voices in that dub, and definitely the most, well-known one, because it just didn't even cross my mind that there was another dub, but I guess when a movie came out in 1988, like, duh.
yeah, and I've never listened to the other one. I don't know if you have access to it. Like, I don't know if you buy the DVD, if you can choose the option or something, but I feel like it's probably been kind of left to die.
Yeah, I definitely don't know, because I remember it's funny you mentioned that. I remember buying the DVD at Walmart back in the day when I was just beginning my anime collection, I feel like. So I probably had nothing on DVD, and I remember I think it was in one of those bargain bins. If not, it was on the shelf where it was, greatly discounted or something. And I was just like, oh, Akira, because I think the first time I watched it was probably with you. I think we rented it from either Blockbuster or the library, which...
Yeah, I think that sounds about right, because that was before we ever owned any anime. We would just rent it every now and then.
Yeah, and so then I remember that was the same dub. Basically, was the point of that story. So it was.
Yeah.
And I don't remember any audio options, though. If there were, I probably wasn't looking for them. But so we're gonna just take a kind of dive into this, because I think it's interesting when we go back. We've talked about a few different things over the last few episodes with Does It Hold Up, and it ranges from some things that are well known and well regarded and well respected in general, and then other things that were maybe lesser known but might have a fan base, or different. There's just like a range of...
Yeah, we definitely touched on some things that I had never heard of before. So
things even that were means. Or things that were just maybe a little bit more like personal choices, that maybe people know about it, but they might be more so our does it hold up kind of experience, and we wanted to share with other people. So I think we've covered a good range, and I think this one definitely falls into the slot of classic
without a doubt. When people talk about the best anime movies ever made, this one at least always gets mentioned. Maybe it's not always at the top of the list or whatever, but its name is always thrown around in that regard. So, anyone who is vaguely familiar with anime probably has heard of and possibly seen this movie.
I mean, Kanye West stole ideas from this for his one music video, so
yeah.
I
did not know that.
Yeah, well, I don't remember. I'm not a big Kanye fan, so I actually don't know any of his music by name, except maybe Gold Digger. I think that's the only song I know, but and I don't even know if that's the title of the song. So but yeah, in one of his videos he did the whole motorbike, the cyberpunk kind of thing, and it was basically just a rip-off of Akira. So
yeah. So I guess let's just jump into talking about it here. So what are your initial when's the last time you watched this movie? I guess maybe we'll start there.
All right. And it's, before we do that real quick, I'm just going to give like a quick, in case for anyone who hasn't ever seen it. We're not going to go into like let's explain the plot of this movie, because I feel like A, most people have seen it. B, if you should just go maybe try and watch it if that's the case. But basically, there was World War III, Tokyo, there was destruction. It's now Neo Tokyo. It takes place in 2020, so it's in the future.
2019.
Or 2019, yes, sorry, thank you.
It takes place in 2019, and World War III happened in 1988 in this universe.
So there's a lot of civil unrest. There's a lot of unemployment, a lot of government corruption, disruption, lots of different things going on. So there's just a whole... The world is not a good place to be living in, really. And your main characters, which would be Kaneda and Tetsuo, they're part of a bike gang, basically. And there's a lot of different bike gangs that are all around Neo Tokyo. So that kind of just sets it up, I guess.
Yeah, and the two main characters are orphans, and they're kind of like wards of the state. It seems like that they're under the school's direct provision or something like that. It's not explained fully, but I think that context is a little important.
Yeah, and there's definitely and then there's scientific experiments going on that we'll probably get into later. So that was just kind of to give like this is the world we're existing in, just for anyone who has no idea what it's about. So to your question, when was the last time I watched it? Man, I honestly couldn't tell you. Like it had been a long time since I had watched it, and there was a part of me that always felt I wanted to show it to my wife because she had never seen it, and every time I think about doing it, for some reason I just wouldn't feel like it. I don't know why. It felt like there was something like blocking me, like almost as if I felt like, oh, this movie's just like an investment.
It's because you knew she was going to hate it, right?
No, she watched it with me, and she enjoyed it actually. So I don't want to give away what I thought, but yeah. So it's been. I mean, to go back, it was definitely one of the first anime movies I had ever seen. Like I said, I watched it back when we were kids, and watched it a few times here and there over the years. But yeah, I couldn't even tell you. Like when I was thinking, I was like, when was the last time I watched it? It has to have been, I don't know, at least 5 years, but I think it was even more than that. But what about you?
Yeah, for me, I'm pretty sure I've only seen this movie once, and it's when we watched it when we were kids. I may have briefly like watched it a second time, maybe not really paying attention to it or something, but it's been a good 15 years, if not longer.
That's crazy. See, like, because I know I definitely have rewatched it. Now, how much I was paying attention when I put it on is debatable, but
Yeah.
I'm surprised that you never, I don't know, just never decided to pop it on or something like you
Yeah,
might
it's,
have. But
it's just one of those that I never felt the need to revisit until now.
interesting. So going into this, I think one of the things about it's interesting going to a movie that is revered as a classic is kind of trying to take that filter off of it and just try to look at it a little more objectively. And I think to kind of go, I guess like what really works for this movie is I guess like we can start with that is sort of like points of what really works for you or what doesn't work for you, I guess. But I'll start with what really worked is I think that this movie, what it does is it sets its world up so perfectly with its beginning scenes with the biker. There's like the bike chase between the gangs, and I mean it basically gives you everything you need to know about this world within the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think they do a really good job with that. It's also in my opinion, some of the most beautiful scenes in the movie are that like first 10 minutes where you're getting the bikes moving around with the light trail, and it just really it looks smooth, and it looks really good, I think, for the late 80s. And like you said, they do a good job of showing you, like, here's the violence, here's how the police act towards people. They do a very good job of setting up, like, this is a dystopian city, and this is how things work here.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the strong points of this movie is the storytelling. And to go into it is that as I was watching it, I thought about there never seems to be, I never felt like there was an unnecessary scene. I never felt like there was a scene that I was questioning, like, and there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in this, but it all felt like purposeful, and it all felt like you could explain it, or you could follow how it got to that point.
Yeah, I would agree with you that it's very economical with its time, and in that, like, it does feel like everything has purpose, but I would almost say that it wasn't long enough. That there was so much plot shoved into this 2 hours that at some points it felt like there needed to be a breather and there needed to be more kind of explanation given. And maybe it's just because I missed some things or go overlooked, but between, like you got the character story between Tetsuo and Kaneda mainly, and then Kei is the other, I would say, main character. But then you're exploring, like government corruption, class warfare, religious cultism, then
Yeah.
the supernatural elements, like not even those are all outside the main plot basically, and there's just so much stuff going on that like I could see this almost fitting better as like a 12 episode series than a movie.
Well, and isn't the manga is much longer, and this only covers part of it? Am I correct in that? Do you know?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I've never read it. I thought
Neither
about
have I.
yeah, I thought about reading it before we did this, but I just didn't have the time to get it in. So yeah, my understanding is this is a much more condensed version, and like you said, only covers a chunk of what the manga is.
I will say that watching this is probably the most. I'm not a big manga reader for anyone out there. I actually had a big one. I'm not a manga reader, I should say. But I know, Brandon, you've gotten more into it lately, and we've talked about it. And I think when I was watching this, I thought, maybe if I was going to start going somewhere with it, like start trying to get into manga, I might actually start with Akira to see that, because that is a thought that crossed my mind while watching it. Was I wanted to see more in depth of what was happening. So I was really interested in investing. Like you said, there are so many conflicts and sides and elements. Alongside, you have this conflict between Tetsuo and Kaneda that stems from being friends even, and just Tetsuo feeling sort of like Kaneda is his bossy big brother figure and always telling him what to do, and feeling like he's not strong enough ever, and there's scenes throughout the movie that show
the feelings of inadequacy.
That's it. Yeah, thank you. That's the good way. He always was feeling inadequate and not enough, and he was always treated like a little brother. And so there's that relationship in and of itself, and then on top of that, all of the political intrigue that goes on. And so yeah, I actually thought about maybe one of these days that'll be one of the ones I check out first.
Yeah, I think that wouldn't be a bad starting point. I say that having not read it, but it would be an interesting place to start. Let's go. I'll touch on something I didn't like so much.
Okay.
The facial animations were very off-putting to me, and it's from just a purely aesthetic character design perspective. But you have like some characters where their chin takes up like 50% of their face, and then some characters where their forehead takes up like 50% of their face, and it's just this wild inconsistency of how faces are constructed. And it just, I don't know if it set off my OCD or what was going on, but it really bothered me the whole time. Like I couldn't stop seeing it.
Well, and that's sort of the art style of, man, I feel like an idiot for not remembering who did this. But I'm looking it up now just so I can. Okay. Yeah, Otomo. Okay, that's who directed it. So I'm trying to find who's the artist. Is it him too? Well, anyway, people are gonna probably dump on me for not remembering this, but whatever. So, but that sort of art style, because he did Steam Boy. That's what I'm thinking of, is basically same director and everything like that, and it's a similar art style. Also, kind of. It like fits in with the 80s art style in some ways.
Yeah, it wasn't, it's just one of those things that was a little off-putting to me. It's not breaking my enjoyment of this, but
yeah, I don't know. I don't mind it. I liked it. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say I liked it, but I didn't mind it. I think it fits with just the time period. But to go to one of the points of the animation, and I know this was during that time when anime movies were, before they had a financial crisis in Japan, so anime movies got big budgets, and you can definitely see that. But it's amazing to me when I watch this is to see is how much money must have gone into it, because back then how good it looks compared to even some of the anime movies now.
Yeah.
Except for like the really, really big ones. Or even just like certain anime series, like you'll see where season 2 gets a budget cut and you're like, whoa, okay. Like,
yeah, and you see the noticeable drop off.
Yeah, and so for this movie to look so good and still hold up as well in terms of visual quality is really impressive, and I think a testament to why it has been held in such high regard and as a classic, because you don't have to make an excuse for the way it looks. It's one of the things that supports it, with especially also looking at later on where you start to have, as Tetsuo starts to become more and more consumed by Akira, and transforms into this monstrous form, and there's all these like limbs and body parts and things devouring people. I mean, it's just the animation of that is just crazy.
Yeah, when it's at the climax and it's the expanding of flesh, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really does, like, this is probably the best pre-90s looking movie I've seen, at least. And it holds up against a lot of more modern things as well.
Yeah. So I would definitely say animation is one of the strong points of this movie. Also, I think an interesting thing that that I think really makes this movie distinct and just, I don't know, I guess it's just sort of an artistic choice that makes it powerful is its use of sound. And in terms of sound, it's more so the lack thereof. How it uses silence throughout the movie is something that I found to be super impactful, and isn't a lot of times I feel like maybe an anime isn't something that you see as often, is the use of silence to really emphasize a point or bring attention to something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're far more likely to have sound be used to emphasize a point, even if, like, I almost feel like the equivalent of anime silence is cicadas. You know, like they'll just throw that.
Nowadays, yeah.
They'll just throw that sound in there instead of having silence to create that kind of same effect. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I agree with you, and it makes the times they do use, so there's not a whole lot of background music, but they'll use chanting at different points. That, like, to me, it's reminiscent like of Gregorian chant almost. Like, it's very kind of like this distorted chanting sounds. And that becomes even more, I think it hits harder because it's almost always coming out of and leading into silence, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. And there's also the parts like when Tetsuo is having hallucinations and you're seeing the different things happening to him as he's kind of, as he's growing into this, what he eventually becomes at the end of the movie. And it's, so you'll see, and the other thing too is you'll see people's mouths moving, so you know that people are talking, but you can't hear them. And I think it's just such a cool choice that they did, because it really, like I said, it does, like, it emphasizes it in a way that's different. So I just think that's something really cool about this movie, that it really stands out. And like you said, there's the music, but you can't hear the dialogue too. So in terms of sound quality and just sound design, I think that's a really good artistic choice about this movie that also makes it stand out compared to just, I don't know, I think a lot of anime in general.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
And then in terms of the dub, I guess we could say I liked it. What about you?
It was fine. You know, it was solid, for especially comparing from the time period. I think it was quite solid. They had, like you said, a few familiar voices in there. But even a lot of times with these older movies and anime, like, you'll have one or two or maybe three characters that are those familiar voices that give strong performances, and then everyone else is awful, and it's just like all the side characters are terrible, and it seems like they kind of just picked people up off the street and asked them to read a line once, and then they're like, all right, you can leave now. But this didn't seem like that at all. Like, even all the unfamiliar voices and the side characters all were pretty good across the board.
There was like the doctor in it, and the is he a colonel or is he a general? I'm trying to remember. Colonel. That's what I thought. The colonel, and they have those two guys' voices you hear in everything. I mean, the one guy always plays doctors in everything.
Yeah.
And the one corrupt politician and different things. So there's a lot of, although I don't know them by name, I know their voices very well, and I think they all filled their roles well, and even the rest of, like, the biker gang and stuff like that. So there were these characters that would maybe make smaller appearances, but they never felt, there wasn't this huge significant drop off.
Yeah, it was at worst it was okay, which is, that's a compliment for a movie coming from this time, especially.
So I guess if we had to kind of decide, like, or talk about what makes this a classic movie, like, what would you say to someone that, or what do you think is just like a strong, like, one of the strongest things about this movie, of, like, the case for watching it?
I think and I'm not going to dive into trying to explain all of it, especially because I don't understand a lot of it, but I think it is very evident while watching this that there is a lot more to it than just what you're being told. There is a lot of symbolism. There is a lot of, they're telling a bigger story than what you're looking at, if that makes sense. It definitely feels like something that has more meaning deeper down to it. And I think that resonates with people, even if they can't, put their finger on what this is supposed to actually mean. Like, is Tetsuo a representation of the nuclear bomb or something like that? You might not even nail down any specifics like that, but I think you can really just feel that there's more to it than what's on the surface.
Yeah, that it's not just this movie about two friends and their growing rift. That because it tackles some of the bigger. So I mean, I'm watching it now and looking at how the world is, and I was like, I mean, they kind of got it right, I guess, for 2019, 2020. Like,
I mean, it's much different than what we're actually.
I know, I'm kidding,
today,
but I know it's not. Yeah, this is way worse there. But what I'm saying is that, I think it resonates watching it though, as you see there is a lot more political unrest and a lot more social unrest and different things going on, not just here but around the world. So there's a bigger picture to it, and I think it brings up the idea, brings up those ideas that, also just the ideas of humanity destroying itself, because, again, that's another thing we see a lot of. I mean, we have the capability to destroy this earth in seconds if we want to, and then we, slowly are doing it in some ways. So it's I think a movie that its bigger themes really resonate still today and will resonate with people, and so you can grab onto that, and then on top of it, it has this story of friendship and this falling apart.
Yeah, and the kind of the surface level plot is very basic in a lot of ways, that it's it's two friends who end up splitting over a kind of disagreement of how they see each other, almost, and everyone can really relate to that. Everyone can relate to having a falling out with someone, and then it has those larger things looming, as you're saying, that I think really you can at least recognize there's more there, even if you don't see exactly what it's supposed to mean.
I agree. And I don't know, is there anything else, or do you have any questions about it that you came up for you, or kind of some things about the characters, or I don't know, we can kind of just keep.
Yeah, nothing specific. I guess a couple nitpicky things. Like, I feel like the children, espers, I believe they were referred to. I think they didn't really get enough characterization, and they kind of throw in a flashback backstory for them at the end of the movie almost, and it's I don't know, I didn't really like how that was handled. I would have liked to see their interactions a little more and understand even how they interact with each other, and it just that's just left for you to interpret yourself and infer.
I actually kind of like that they just, you don't find out really until the end what their story is, even in that small bit.
I just didn't think there was any value to holding that information back. Like, I think you could have given it earlier, and it would have been better. As in, like, you would have I think the audience could use the understanding there. I don't think there was any reason for the audience to be kept in the dark. But this is, I guess, just my opinion.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, in terms of just as a protagonist, I think Kaneda is a really good protagonist, and I like just his kind of snarkiness and charm, but he's also very serious. So I think that's another thing too for this movie. I forgot there's some humor in it, when he's trying to hit on Kei and talk about their relationship with each other. They just met, and I think that's another thing that this movie, what makes it, be able to have such heavy stuff but still maintain your interest, is because it throws in these little bits of humor and these little bits of levity.
Yeah,
I almost said brevity, levity. And that makes it, so I just think that's another thing to point out, that I in watching this, I remembered I was like, oh yeah, Kaneda's like he's a really cool character.
Yeah, he brings a balance to the tone of everything that I think is much needed. I think if you remove him and throw in an all serious all the time character into that role, then it would be too much. It'd be too much go all the time and no stop. On the flip side, though, I know you're not. I think you're not really supposed to like Tetsuo, but I found him just the most annoying part of this movie. That like, I don't think I can relate to him at all, and it made me just annoyed by all of his thoughts and choices.
You couldn't relate to him in the sense of him feeling, kind of less than.
Yeah, the feeling less than, but your response to that is like you attain power and then immediately just start abusing the crap out of it, like with complete disregard to everyone around you. I think it's a good. I think it's meant to be a representation of how easily power can corrupt. Is what I assume they're going for because it seems pretty clear. But like, I believe you're supposed to not like what you're seeing, but it's just he really just annoyed me the whole movie.
Interesting. I didn't find him annoying. I can understand that it's a pretty quick jump, but I also think because of the circumstances and sort of the sort of supernatural elements that come into play, that it ramped it up a lot faster. But
yeah,
the idea that someone feeling slighted who then gains power in life and uses it in an abusive way, that's not something that's unheard of in this world. So I think
no,
that idea,
that's why like I understand what they were doing there, and I get it. But again, I think this just also falls more into this just needs to be longer, so you can maybe give that a little bit of time to breathe instead of just like flipping a switch, basically. But again, these are kind of like nitpicky things that annoyed me a little bit.
See, to the point of it being longer, the one thing I think, because I remember when I was just talking about how I would always have a trepidation of watching it again, so I really was focused in and watching it, and I never found myself falling out of it. So I think although yes, it'd be interesting to have some of that more backstory, more time to breathe for some of the elements. The one thing that I think is such a strength of this movie is that it just keeps it moving along, and there's not these drops. I think going back to when we talked about Ghost in the Shell and how we said there's sort of this lull in the middle of the movie, and you're just kind of like, okay, like, can we get to the part where the giant robot comes in or whatever?
Where the Tachikoma shows up?
Yeah, like the big tank thing. So this, I never really felt that. I felt like it kept it moving so well, and because there is a variety of things. Like another really cool scene is the when Tetsuo is having sort of this nightmare and the toys start to come to life, and then you realize that they were the kids manifesting them or manipulating them, and seeing the kind of the horror in that, using these childhood images. I mean, there's a lot of like grotesque stuff in this movie, which also I think is really, really cool about it.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, those are kind of, when we were talking about the end of the movie where the flesh explosion was so well animated, it seems like when they do grotesque in this movie, that's where they really put the attention to detail into the animation. Because even those like, toys to life scenes are also kind of the same thing, where just you can tell that there is an extra amount of care put into making that scene look exactly how it's meant to.
And the sound that plays during that scene too, I always remember that sound. It's such a, it's like creepy.
Yeah.
That's my best impression of it.
You nailed it. It's exactly
nailed
what
it.
it sounds
That's
like.
exactly it. Yeah, and again, this movie, I think it builds to that ending, and I think that's one of the best things is in terms of pacing, is it builds and it doesn't drop, and I think that is another reason why it's such a strength, or just another strength of this movie, is that it culminates in this huge battle, essentially, between Tetsuo and Kaneda, and all of the worlds collide, whether it's the political and the personal, and I think that's just another thing about this movie that's so strong. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think again, I keep coming back to I need just a little more time with this. That like they do a good job of addressing the the religious zealotry, the group of people that worship Akira like a god, even though they don't know whether he really exists or not, the political corruption, the infighting between the political forces and the military forces, where the colonel ends up calling a state of emergency and taking over martial law, basically. They do a good job of including all of these things into the movie, but it just needs, like, it seems like each one was done about like 3/4 of what you need. You just need a little bit extra. Show me that politician a little bit more so I understand like what his motivations are and why. Because sometimes it just seems like characters are dropped in, you get a minute with them, and then they show up an hour later, and you're supposed to like care about them to a degree and not necessarily like them, but have some sort of rooting interest, whether it's positive or negative, against that. And I think it misses sometimes because they just don't give you enough time with all the stuff they're doing.
I agree. To be fair, that's true, because there are some points, if you kind of blinked and looked the other way for a minute, you might miss it. Like I think there's one scene that it stood out to me when all of the politicians and the colonels are included, so it's a lot of government officials kind of debating about what's going on and talking about it. And if you're watching it, you can see how the one corrupt politician, in that moment you realize, he's setting all this up, and the colonel is his fall man. But if you like blinked and looked the other way, you would totally miss it. And I think, again, like, this goes to maybe me in the past. I mean, having had where I was a kid watching it intently, and then probably the last few times having watched it was sort of in background, passing, whatever. But it's a thing that if you're not intently watching, you might miss that. And so then by the time you get to the point where you realize that he has set some of these things up, then you might go, wait, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and those two scenes you're talking about are so far apart, you also might just forget because there's so much going on. Like you said, it keeps a steady pace, which means there's always things happening that are important.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add? I feel like I've kind of talked about a lot of the main things that I enjoyed. I think just animation, sound, voiceover, it's all strong. Story and pacing, I think, is all very strong. Is there anything else specifically that's stood out or points you want to bring up?
No, I think we've covered just about everything I wanted to talk about as well.
Yeah, it's always tricky talking about a classic movie like this and something so well known and well revered. I feel like but I think trying to take a little bit more of a hopefully deeper look into it and some of the more standout elements of it, and like I said, trying to take a look at it through a lens that isn't just, this is a classic movie and I'm supposed to like it.
Yeah, which is,
and looking at it that
like,
way.
for me, it's very easy to avoid those traps. I tend to be, I actually tend to have to worry about going to the other side of things, of being overly critical of something just because I'm trying to avoid falling into that it's supposed to be good trap. But
yeah, I think I do a pretty good job generally of that too. I think I can set aside the biases you come in with and the, all that sort of thing, and just take it for what it is. So in conclusion, Brandon, does Akira still hold up?
I will say yes, it still holds up. I think the movie's great. I think its bones are better than its execution, but that's kind of splitting hairs. Like, I think it has more potential than what it is, but I also think it's great as it is. So, yeah, I'd say it absolutely holds up. What about you?
I have to agree. I say it does hold up, and I think it's no question it holds up. I think if you, as an introduction to anime, and if it's I think this is a perfect gateway. Like, if you needed a gateway into anime, if someone was looking for a recommendation, I mean, maybe
it might be a little too weird, especially with especially with the hallucination scenes and then the ending sequence. Like, it might be off-putting to people with, I don't know, more conservative tastes, maybe.
Yes. So I was going to say, with the caveat that it is someone who is pretty, like, well versed in watching films and doesn't have any, like, real hang-ups. But if someone wanted to say, someone asked you for a high quality anime and was looking to specifically watch anime, I think it is a very good place to start. with the caveat that they better not have, I don't know, like, I guess just hang-ups in general about stuff,
Yeah.
They have an open mind about what they're watching.
Yeah.
But it definitely showcases the strengths of anime because, again, what it's able to do with its animation and the storytelling and how grotesque and how incredible, and there's just so many big moments in it that you could only do with anime. Like this I don't think it would work at all or as well live action, in my opinion.
No, you absolutely not. Like, there's just too much. You would have to have too much CGI in that movie, and I don't think it'd look good. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a live action one out there. You could go find out for yourself.
I'm sure it's wonderful. But I think that is one of the strengths of anime itself as a medium, is that you can create some things that just don't seem to translate in the real world. So I say absolutely someone should go watch it. It still is a classic. It still holds up. Like you said, there's some of the little story elements that, sure, I wish it would maybe be fleshed out, but to its credit, it doesn't leave any real loose ends. It wraps it up nicely. And everything ties back together. I never felt like I was sort of floundering at any moment watching it. So I say it definitely holds up, and you should still watch it.
Yeah, I would agree. So you got anything else to add?
Nope. I think that's it, other than if you enjoyed this podcast and if you like anime and like video games and other things like that, you can check us out. We have our YouTube channel, Wooster Stream, where we post all of our episodes of the NQO podcast. So you can find all our previous episodes on a playlist there if you got some time and want to listen to us talk even more. So we have that. We also stream on Twitch, different things like that. We have an Instagram, so you can follow us there. So just if you enjoy this, subscribe, all those things that people say at the end of YouTube videos. That's about it. Yeah, this was fun. Just getting to talk about this. I'm glad I went back and watched it. That's the only thing I'd say is I really enjoyed it. So
yeah, so did I. As many negative things I may have said, I do love this movie.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us today. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Yep,
Bye.
And talk to you.